Hello, my name is Katrina Kennett, and I'm a doctoral student in Curriculum and Instruction and Writing Studies, and I am one of the co-organizers of EdCampCU. I'm here today with Todd Lash.
I'm Todd. I'm a teacher in Champaign Urbana schools.
And Matt Sly.
I'm a coordinator of teaching and learning, 6th through 12th, in Champaign Urbana schools.
Thank you both. So what we'd like to do today is talk about a very brief history of EdCampCU, and then have a conversation with those of us in the room and whoever is able to join us, and then do some looking forward to what EdCampCU will become in the future. So to start, I used to teach high school English in Massachusetts, and that's actually where I became involved with the EdCamp model. So EdCamps are participant-led conferences. The idea is that there's no set schedule before you walk into the room, that that morning you come and get your coffee, and there's a blank schedule on the board, and people decide what to put up there. So it's participant-led, it's participant-built, and you really get this amazing feeling. Everybody's excited to be there, and I was at EdCamp Boston, and EdCamp Connecticut, and EdCamp New Hampshire. Thankfully, everybody's like real close right there. So I was able to attend these different EdCamps and really start to build this community and this network of other teachers who were thinking about some of the same things that I were, but also thinking very differently. And I was able to learn from them and grow my professional learning community. But what was really exciting about this also, in some ways, became not quite repetitive, but there was a lot of things that were happening the same. It was in some ways you started to see the same faces, and we were having the same tech conversations. And so to mix it up a little bit, some of the people I was teaching with, we brought our students. We're like, well, let's bring our students to EdCamps and see how the conversations can change when we bring high schoolers, instead of just talking about them, that they're actually in the room and a part of this conversation. So that was a really exciting thing that we did to kind of mix that up. It was also really inspiring as a model, because not only are you getting all these ideas and it's a different sort of way you're participating in a conference, but it was inspiring in the sense that I brought the model back into the classroom. We started running ed cafes. So they're like a way to do ed camps in the classroom. And another way that it was inspiring was that one of my students, who had actually been to a couple of the ed camps with me, ended up doing her senior project on running EdCamp Plymouth. So it was this way to develop capacity and leadership for this high schooler, who then, for the entire school district, put together an ed camp for all of us to attend. So then, moving from New England, I came to CU, and I was really excited to have actually some all these different conversations. But I found that I was having these amazing conversations, especially about education, and just in different pockets. It became like, oh, here's my grad school class, and here's when I talk to my neighbor, and here's when I talk to somebody else in the community, and here's when I talk to a parent. And I was like, where are the places? And there are some, but where could there be more places where these conversations happen together and not necessarily over in these various pockets? And so that was when I started talking to Matt and Todd about how, here's a model that we were familiar with, and Todd's going to talk about that, and Matt as well, from how they come into EdCamps. But I was like, how could we bring EdCamps to CU, and what is it that will bring these different conversations together that are happening in different places?
So my niche in the schools is in technology education, and more specifically, one second, I gotta wear the thing. Is that good? Mm-hmm. All right. So my niche in the schools is more specifically technology education and computer science education, even more specifically than that. And so I've, over the last few years, been to a lot of practitioner conferences, the ICE conference up in Northern Illinois, the ISTE conference, which is a big national practitioner conference, about 30,000 people attend, and various other ones. And all of these conferences have EdCamp elements to them. And correct me if I'm wrong, but EdCamps pretty much did come out of a tech conference background, right? And so as you can imagine, when you go to one of these conferences that is very focused on educational technology, the EdCamps themselves are very focused on educational technology, right? So you have this kind of very narrow focus, and you have an almost captive participatory base of people that are all interested in kind of the same things. And so when you would go to these, just the kind of stuff that you would talk about, I mean, if you're into that, it's great, but it never it's always very siloed in a lot of ways, right? And I think that we all saw that there was a lot of potential to kind of get out of that siloing model of EdCamp. And when we purposely started talking about running an EdCamp here in town, we wanted a more broad focus. We wanted it to be something that wasn't just for educational technology folks, although we definitely have some of that in our EdCamps. I think we've had some element of that in every EdCamp, but we didn't want it to be exclusively about EdTech, right? So we wanted it to be much more broad focused. And unlike traditional EdCamps where you start with a topic, someone says, I'm interested in this, or I am passionate about this, and they go up to the board and they say, this is what I want to talk about. We start our EdCamps with a question, right? Something that you want to learn about, something that maybe has been nagging at you for a long time and you'd like to hear some other perspectives on. So that's another thing that's different for us. And I think the big thing here is that Champaign Urbana is, we feel like is really, really ripe for this kind of an event. We have a lot of very insular pockets of people meeting going on. We have university folks that talk mostly to university folks, right? And we have public ed folks that talk mostly to public ed folks. And then we have people over here that are doing social justice work all on their own. And anyway, everyone's kind of operating in isolation. And we thought, well, wait a minute, wouldn't it be awesome if we could get all of those different people to come together and mix them up around these kind of shared questions that people want to know about, right? And really kind of make this free space where we can ask questions, we can probe, where it's okay not to know the answers, right? Like, you know, some of us in our various realms have to be experts at things, right? But we purposely wanted to take people out of the expert role, right? And everybody in an EdCamp is a learner. Everyone will have something to contribute, but no one is expected to be an expert.
Touch my zipper here, see if that works. So, where I come to this was I was 14 years a science teacher at Urbana High School, and then shifted into being an ed tech coach in Unit 4 years ago. I have been a part of professional learning for teachers for better part of, I guess, 10, designed at Urbana High School around workshop sessions, and then as my role as a tech coach, very heavily focused on professional learning for teachers. I guess I'd grown tired of experiences for teachers that were decisions made by small groups of people that was what was best for the learning for everyone. And so when my first experience with an EdCamp, I was like, wow, how do we scale this to district level decisions or building level decisions about how we maybe even just start looking at professional learning differently as being a place where it starts from where their interests are at, what kinds of questions are they asking, and then when I had the opportunity to join forces with Katrina and Todd around looking at this and scaling it up from just where my focus had primarily been building level, district level, to looking at this as engaging community and engaging others. The EdCamp model really worked and served, it really meshed well with where I wanted to see more of a push in our schools, which is the idea of personalized professional learning. The idea of starting from where do your interests lie, where your passions live, and finding those people who you may not ever get a chance to if you're only going to sessions where you have one choice, right? On this Friday, school gets out early and we all go to this room and we're all getting this as our means of growing. And so we put together, and then so talking about the actual how it rolled out, EdCampCU with this past January we had our third, and so on our website we have our archive of what this has looked like. But I think this maybe gives some context for if this is your first time hearing about EdCamp as a concept. This gives a little bit of context about how it looks. And so this is first one's schedule. And so again, I think we've talked a little bit about this vaguely about how this functions, but essentially this gives a timeline of what it looks like for an EdCamp experience, coming together at the beginning of the day, having starting from questions people have, and then building up a schedule and locations where people can go and follow their and talk about these questions. It puts everyone on a same playing field in terms of there's no expert in the room, and it's a room full of people where there's just facilitation around a question or starting with the question and seeing where it goes and seeing if the conversation and making connections helps move the step forward. Do you want me to talk about or do you want to do the?
That's great.
Do the.
What's lovely about this first session right here, I will say, so at our first EdCamp, how can we integrate technology into social justice education? Amarin was actually one of my pre-service teachers, so she was a junior, and she was leading this conversation, and we had the director of teacher education there. So wonderful to think about, just like see the people who came together around that table because of this question, right? And that was a really like indicative, I think it's just a really nice moment that I remember from that very first round of that very first EdCamp, that it was doing that bringing together that we were hoping for.
And I just passed out to everybody an article that was written in, what's that? Oh, I'm sorry, I have a kale. This is an article that was written for the Champaign Urban's website by a parent of Kenwood Elementary where I teach who came to the EdCamp. So one of the audiences that we targeted was parents, right? We wanted to have teachers and parents coming together. So this article gives a little bit more insight into what it was like for her, from her perspective as a parent coming into it.
So we've each taken kind of the angle from EdCamp, why we each found value in it, but and then how that drove the process of EdCampCU's development, and then I think this page on our site really highlights our guiding principles of really 3 big areas of every of our EdCamp design. Is that the you're in charge side of things? This is really participant-driven, participant-led, designed to meet the learning needs of the people that are coming. Taking the chance to explain where you're coming from, but both what's your background, and then when you're in having discussions, clarifying and identifying where your beliefs, where your structures lie in those conversations, and then finally it's connecting with people. We have EdCamp has provided amazing opportunities for interesting, diverse groups of people to come together in spaces that have I've never seen come together and talk about from different vantages and different viewpoints in a way that's not, maybe it's depoliticized or removed from situations that might have more struggles to getting at honest and engaging conversations. And so these 3 principles really guide our work with EdCamp. So, I mean, I guess
I would say the you're in charge thing too is kind of a sliding scale kind of thing, right? And you can come to EdCamp and without leading a session or without posting a topic, it really is, or as little as you want to make of it, but no one is going to do it for you, I think is the central message, right? Nothing is going to be imposed upon you. You get to make the decisions at the very least, right?
And what's nice, so if you're ever attending another EdCamp, you might actually hear that rule as vote with your feet, which is, I think, just it's along the same lines, but our focus on you're in charge of what you're learning, I think, is slightly more friendly and really gets across that flexibility of the schedule. So right now I'm going to introduce Sara. She is one of the co-presidents of the student RSO. She's going to talk really briefly, and then we'll have our break for pizza, which is being spread out. So she'll do that, and then we'll do pizza, and then we'll go for the next part.
Hi everyone. So like Katrina said, my name is Sara. My friend Michelle, I see you added Michelle, is here in spirit. She is the other co-founder of this RSO. So we got the idea to start it after we attended our first EdCamp back in September. Because Michelle was in Katrina's class, actually, because she's in the English cohort. I am a secondary ed student as well. I'm in chemistry. My wonderful professor, Barbara, is sitting over there for my methods course. So we really had a great experience, and a lot of it was just based upon the fact that it was depoliticized, as Matt said. Especially, we got the opportunity to speak to the board president of Unit 4 schools in a setting where he wasn't acting as a president. He was acting as there as a parent, there as a former employee in the pipefitters union around Champaign. So he had a lot of perspective to bring to the table. So we were just really inspired based on our experience. We actually walked out of there and walked to the car and sat in the car, and we were like, okay, we can't talk about this for a couple days. We need just a couple days to process this. Because there was just so much. There were so many ideas that we talked about that we were really interested and excited about. So based on that, we did all the logistical stuff. We started the RSO. And now this semester we had our first couple meetings. And we only had 3 meetings. One we had to cancel due to inclement weather. And no one was going to come out. But we've had a lot of trouble with getting membership, and we made an announcement at one of our big secondary ed meetings where we had students from science, English, history, math, and we passed around a piece of paper. We got a lot of interest, but very few people have been showing up to our meetings. So right now, and that's kind of, it goes without saying, there's going to be struggle when you start a new organization, just as like you've seen EdCamp grow on its own within, Champaign Urbana. So right now, our focus is how do we get more people involved? How do we really get more people interested? And in addition to that, some of our overall aims as an organization. So a couple of these are more of things that I'm interested in, and I'm not going to say that it is affiliated with the entire sense of EdCamp, especially in terms of growth and interest-based education. These are a couple things that I'm really interested in, and I've had some great conversations with people about at EdCamp. So in terms of, how do we make education K through 12 overall more tailored to students' ability levels and what their interests are? And this was something the board president also talked about, like how can we make things more apprenticeship-based or vocational? Our education I bring up because a dear friend of mine is in the art education program here, and I remember her mentioning in the past she did not feel very connected with the College of Ed, and I just shot her a text this morning and was like, as an art ed student, I remember you saying, do you feel disconnected from the College of Education? And she said, absolutely, 100%. She said, we're taking curriculum and instruction courses, we are taking educational psychology courses, we are just as interested in, being a part of the College of Education as any other, subgroup, math, science, whatever. But I guess she said that the school claims that they're supposed to be more community-based, but she kind of sees a little, discrepancy with that because all the work that they've been doing is in the schools. So I think a big goal for me is to try to get her and get other people from art education to come to EdCamp meetings and give their perspective on things, because I think there's a lot of really creative and passionate people that we're missing out on having these conversations with from our education. And that inclusivity in STEM fields, I thought I would particularly bring this up to you guys because that's a really important thing to me as a chemistry major, as someone who has gone through the undergrad program here and has even seen in my early field placements out in the middle schools the way females shrink back in general and don't feel that maybe they can contribute as much to the conversation, even in small groups among middle schoolers. You see the 2 boys monopolizing the conversation and the girls shrinking back, and you really need to pull something out of them. So that's definitely another thing that's really important to me. So that's about it.
All right, so what we're gonna do now is first eat pizza. But this is a perfect time for us to pause and grab some pizza. And what we're gonna do, we'd like to do for the next 15, 20 minutes is actually run a mini EdCamp in this room. So as you're getting your pizza, start thinking about what might be a question that you are interested in talking about, right? We've already heard about some siloing. Through our conversation, I know we're thinking about siloing, we're thinking about ways to connect in different ways, we're thinking about content areas. So I'll be coming around and asking if there are questions that you want to ask, and we'll have some time to be able to do that as we sit and eat and talk to each other.
Remember, even if you have a question, that doesn't mean that you have to lead the discussion on that question. Right. It just means you have a question.
Okay. All right.
Let's eat.
Let's eat. Can I pause this? Okay. So now that everybody has had a chance to get some pizza, we have our three questions. Some of you might pick up and move, or some of you might stay where you are. I tried to keep the areas of the room right in here. So the way that it works is that we have these three conversations. Since we're going to do such a short amount of time, if you want to pop between two, that's great. Or if you just want to stay at one of the conversations, also wonderful. But in the pizza area, so over in this area, the question is, how can we strengthen community and university connections, especially thinking about STEM fields? So if you're interested in talking about that, then you'll go over and join there. My question is, who would you like to see at the next EdCampCUs? So we've already been talking about some of the people that have already attended, from parents to in-service teachers. We had people, some Urbana adult educators who were at the last one, and Fab Lab makers. But I'm always in that more. So my question is, who else should we be thinking about? And if you are saying, oh, this person definitely needs a specific invitation. So I would love to talk about that over here on the non-pizza side of the U. And then in the Caesar's Palace corner, basically at that back table, if you're interested, Yelena has the question, what pathways for mentorships already exist here, and what ones potentially could or should exist? So thinking about existing vehicles for mentorship and apprenticeship in this community broadly, and then specifically thinking about education. So if you're interested in talking about that, then join Yelena over in that corner. We will take it as 12:35, so we're going to take about 15 minutes, and then come back just for a thank you wrap up, because I know people might have 1 o'clock that they need to go to. All right, so with that said, please feel free to pick up, move chairs around, join, introduce yourselves, connect with each other. All right. I hate to interrupt these brilliant conversations.
There are people from those places asking.
But I will. All right, so. Did I do that?
That was George going away.
Okay, good. Oh, wonderful. Not wonderful about George going away. Just that I didn't mess up.
Riddance, George.
No, that's not what I meant. All right, so in the spirit of what we were just talking about for EdCamp, please make sure that you have some way of contacting the people in your group after we go forward for today. Because like I said, in the spirit of ongoing conversations, if something comes up in a week or in a month and you say like, oh, I really want to tell Joe about that, please have a way to do so. We really want that for this to be a space to help make that happen. I will say very briefly that we as organizers are looking forward to actually a partnership that just came through with the Urbana Public Schools. So we're going to talk with them about them hosting the third leg of EdCampCU in the early summer. And so that hopefully will then create a 3 times a year EdCamp. That, again, is a structure that helps support the ongoing conversations, where you know that in generally like 5 to 6 months, don't worry about that math, that you're able to come back and potentially see people that you saw just a few months ago and carry on those conversations. And then we are currently talking with the Pygmalion organizers and looking to do the Ed branch of Pygmalion and really to build up multiple events, but have EdCamp be one of the centerpieces of that growing, be a part of the success of the Pygmalion Festival, and make that a really important partnership. So with that said, I'm going to go to our final slide, which has our contact information on it. And encourage you to please be in touch with us as you have ideas or if you have suggestions or comments that help us go forward with this work. And we really appreciate you coming today and your time and your enthusiasm, your general greatness and awesomeness. All right, have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everybody.